cleaner, but we can also really deliver cost-effective power. So we believe that this contract, because it does that, in our opinion, in our analysis and evaluation, that it will have direct economic benefit to the state we serve and love.
Just add to that, Melinda, another way this is going to benefit Vermonters is in our economic development efforts. I've talked with several major manufacturers in this part of our state recently, who are large users of electricity, who say, if we're going to create more jobs here, if we're going to expand, if we're going to stay in Vermont, we need competitive price power, we need predictably priced power. And to the extent that we don't have electric rates that are subject to the volatility we've seen in carbon-based generation in the last few years, or contracts that have major spikes up and down, that's going to provide the basis for certainty that the business community needs in order to make a further investment in Vermont. So both in their home electric bills and at their place of employment, I think this contract is going to be very beneficial.
And lastly, the prices are going to be set for this energy at the very beginning, but later down the line, when the prices do fluctuate, the market prices fluctuate, will those prices and the change be public, and will we be able to access that once it does actually change?
Yes, those prices would change. I think there would always be filings that would go along with that from a regulatory process perspective. But yes, simply put, as people have described, there's sort of the trajectory based on the starting price, and then if prices go way up, there's a great buffer because the contract price will move, but it will move slower than market. And conversely, if prices were to go down, it would go down, but it would move slower. And we would be filing for those adjustments as they occur, as we do through the normal regulatory process.
Thank you.
Dave Graham, AP.
Good afternoon. First question concerns renewable portfolio standards, which when first created, they were envisioning mainly small-scale new technology power that was going to be enhancing New England's ability to develop solar, wind, maybe some offshore wave power, who knows, but those kinds of projects. I've heard concerns from some, particularly environmentalists, that large shots of hydropower coming down from Canada will tend to flood that market and essentially really quash a lot of the development of renewable energy, more homegrown within New England. I'd like to ask Mr. Young and Ms. Powell, particularly, how do you address those concerns?
I think we ought to both do it. I'll just do it quickly in terms of what I talked about when David O'Brien and I went out to the NARUC meeting in Sacramento. That very question came up, and simply put, what we talked about was that these things do not have to be directly competing. Renewable portfolio standards can be set up however a legislative body decides to set them up. So there could be different classes of renewable. There's the premium renewable, which may be geared towards incenting utilities to purchase the new technology, as you described, the sort of the new wave of renewable energy. There might be another tranche, which would be about incenting a different form of renewable energy, and then there may be another one that recognizes, hopefully there should be one in our opinion, that recognizes large-scale sources that can be really accelerators and facilitators of achieving a low-carbon renewable portfolio. So simply put, that's how we discussed it out there, and one of the ideas of how that could be achieved.
I mentioned it earlier in my remarks that when we at CB stood back and thought about what our power supply would look like out in the future, one of the reasons that we concluded that we would, at least up front, take a little less power from Hydro-Quebec than we had in the past was because we recognized the interest that Vermonters had in the development of our own indigenous renewable resource base. And so what we did was we opened up a part of our portfolio to be available to deal with good Vermont renewable, small renewable projects. So that availability is still there. As I'm sure you know, we will be taking power less than 2.5 megawatts that are under the feed-in tariff program. We think, and we are anxious to continue to work to promote lot removals now and into the future.
Second and last question concerns the formula on which the market smoothing mechanism is based. Can we get a little more detail on that, A, or B, is we saw some reporting the last week or so where there was concern about keeping that under wraps of some kind. How will the prices, a little more detail on how the prices will be capped up or down in the course of the contract?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the price for the first year will be set by the end of this year. And it's an averaging formula in effect that looks at future power costs in four different snapshots this year. Take the average of that amended a little bit by a formula will set the price. As we say, I think that will be about 6 cents. Then going forward, there will be a sort of a strike price. That strike price will be impacted by what happens in the marketplace, underlying inflation, and those kinds of factors. But as Mary has indicated, and Christian, whatever that movement is will be tempered by an adjustment mechanism that doesn't allow the contract price in any given year to move beyond a certain bound, which I will not talk about for confidentiality reasons, but in effect puts a gating mechanism on the movement either up or down in any given year.
Any demands, CDV?
Questions for the Premier. You touched on this before, but I just want you to explain again how the recognition of hydro's power as renewable is going to benefit Quebec taxpayers now and perhaps later if it's tied into any tax credits there.